Texas A&M's blue chip ratio is just another reason why this team can overachieve.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in to Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been an interesting day, a very interesting day. Yesterday was. So we'll get into the Coach Schloss conversation in segment 3. I know all aren't interested in that, but we'll get into it here at the tail end of the show because there's a lot to unpack there. So we got to at least talk about it once. So we'll get there. We'll get to there at the end. But I wanted to talk a little bit about blue chip ratio. I am a huge, huge fan of the blue chip ratio numbers. I think it is a great example of talent. And once again, I think we've learned that talent is only valuable under the right coaching staff. I hate continuing to just, pile it on Jimbo Fisher, but the blue chip ratio at Texas A&M has been really good for a really long time, and there hasn't been a ton to show for it. I do believe that is going to change under Mike Elko. So basically, here's kind of a definition of blue chip ratio. In simple terms, to win the national championship, college football teams have to sign more 4- and 5-star recruits, aka blue chips, than 2- and 3-star players over the previous 4 classes. So the portal has changed blue chip ratio from what it once was, to where you've got to have, obviously, a blue chip ratio for had the portal not been involved. But to me, the portal, the blue chip ratio after the portal is what matters, because it shows what kind of talent you're bringing in, what kind of talent you have on the roster after the transfer portal changes. And Texas A&M's number, once the portal's accounted for, is still really good. And that is my argument for why I think blue chip ratio here is a great example of why the Aggies can overachieve. So, so given the rise of the transfer portal, and this is an article from Good Bull Hunting, given the rise of the transfer portal in recent seasons, Bud, who's the guy that does blue chip ratio, now publishes 2 rankings, one that only accounts for high school recruiting and one that incorporates portal movement. To nobody's surprise, the Aggies are significantly different in both of these 2 lists. So in high school recruiting only, the Aggies are 4th overall behind Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia, with a blue chip ratio of 79%. Incredible number. Incredible number. Now, once again, that's fine and dandy. You have to account for what you've lost, especially when you've had a coaching turnover. And, the coaching turnover for the Aggies has led to a lot of players leaving via the portal, a lot of players coming in via the portal. So where is that blue chip ratio after the portal? So the blue chip ratio after the high school plus transfer portal is tied for 8th in all college football, with tied with Oklahoma, Notre Dame. So you're behind Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Oregon, Texas, LSU, Clemson, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, and then there's the Aggies. And the Florida's on Texas A&M's tail at 58%. So some might say, Andrew, why does that matter? And I'll make my case. I'll tell you why. I am a huge believer in, and I said it a little bit a minute ago, talent under the right hands is incredibly valuable. Has to be under the right hands. The talent has to be coached by something, by a coach that can develop the talent. And I'm going to keep piling on to Coach Fisher, but like I just said, lately some of those 5-star players he was landing highly ranked guys, top 250 guys, just weren't really developing like you would expect players of that caliber to develop. And that's not the case for everybody. That's just, that's not everybody. I don't want to sit here and sound like every player that Coach Fisher had on this roster, nobody developed, because that's just not true. But there were definitely some players who could have developed a little bit more, I think, in this system. But this blue chip ratio after the portal still being so good, top 10 in college football, it tells me that Coach Elko, who's going to do a lot, who I think is going, the mantra, I feel bad, I'm just hammering on Coach Fisher, but the mantra for Coach Fisher's tenure at Texas A&M was less with more. I think that the mantra for Coach Elko is going to be more with less. But then you say more with less, but then you look at this blue chip ratio and you go, this is a top 10, 12 roster in college football. And so that is why, if you've been listening, if you've been an everyday here at Locked On Aggies for a while, when I took over the show a year and 2 months ago, that I'm a big believer in blue chip ratio. I do think it matters, and especially under the right hands. I thought it mattered last year. I thought it was me different with Coach Fisher. It was more of the same. Now I believe this talented roster is underneath the hands of a coach who's actually going to use it and get the most out of it. So I am seeing this blue chip ratio number gets me really excited. And I know some might not care as much as me, and that's fair, but I think it just proves that hitting your ceiling is very much possible. To hit a ceiling, if you want to be a team that hits your ceiling, you've got to, obviously overachieve the expectations. I think the expectations are probably 8 wins. I think if you win, honestly, I think everybody would be happy with 8 wins. But I think if you want to really overachieve, you got to win 9, which once again is only really even on the table because of how the schedule kind of works itself out. And I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, the more that I sit and think about it, the more I'm getting worried about these matchups with Florida and Auburn. I'm telling you, the more I these teams and hear about these two teams, and Florida's talented, and there's a lot going on there. So, but it's good to know that according to this list, you're the only time you're going to play 1, 2. You're going to play 2 football games this year, according to this list, where your opponent is more talented than you are. Now, once again, coaching, there's lots of variables that go into it. It's not like, okay, our blue chip ratio is 63 and yours is 57. We're going to win the game. That's not how this works. But it is a factor. Blue chip ratio is a significant factor to me. And, looking at this number, I think that, Coach Elko via the portal, everyone always says, well, Texas A&M lands these players, but they lose everything in the portal. I think this here proves that, no, they don't lose everything in the portal. I think it's actually really impressive that Alabama's blue chip ratio after the portal is so high, knowing that they lost a lot when Coach Saban left. That's really impressive to me. But where the Aggies number is at, it's still in a really good spot. So to wrap all this up, I think that the blue chip ratio, when you've had a coaching change, I just don't care about that blue chip ratio, knowing it's the 4 years of the high school recruiting classes. These aren't even Elko's recruiting classes. I don't care about that. I care about the one that has to do with the portal, because it simply shows you that Coach Elko still has a talented roster and is very incredibly capable of overachieving this season. So, let me know that in the YouTube comments. Do y'all buy in the blue chip ratio? And I'm not sitting here acting like it is. I'm not saying, okay, well, our blue chip ratio is 63 and yours is 62. We're going to win the game on paper. I'm not saying that, but I do believe it's a factor that matters. I mean, it's gone into, there's the stat to win a national championship, you have to be something in blue chip, or there's only a certain amount of people, you've got to be over 50% blue chip ratio. And there's not a ton of teams that are like that. There's only probably 25 teams with a blue chip ratio over 50%. So This is why it is such an important and valuable number. So let me know in the YouTube comments y'all's thoughts on this. Do you care about the blue chip ratio? Is it important to you? Does it get you excited? Does it make you feel better about the talent on this roster? I want to hear y'all's thoughts on that. I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple preseason all SEC teams, and then we're going to talk a little bit about, hey, Kyle Field. It was ranked pretty high for the new upcoming video game, and I'll tell you what, use that to our advantage. We'll talk about those two things coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I got to tell you about our friends over at Game Time. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pretty simple concept. If you're buying a ticket to anything, concert, sporting event, comedy, theater, whatever it is, if you're buying a ticket, you shouldn't be buying it anywhere other than Game Time. Every time I try to go to an MLB game at least once a month. I try to. Sometimes, life comes at you fast and you get busy and stuff like that. I'm always buying them on Game Time. And the best part about Game Time, their premise is, hey, let's wait and get these tickets late and get the best deals. And that is how I would say I get tickets from them 8 times out of 10. But I've had good luck getting great deals with Game Time buying tickets ahead of time. So whether you want to get them last minute, which is, kind of their premise, or get them ahead of time, Game Time's got you covered. I love Game Time. Seriously, it is the only place I will ever buy tickets to anything for the rest of my life. I love the app. I love how you can see where you're sitting. You can see where, okay, there's the stage, there's the field, there's the arena, whatever it is, or there's the court. You can see it from the app. I love it. It's easy to use. There's no other place anybody should ever be purchasing tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So we've got another list to go through here. We have a list from Phil Steele, who, the GOAT of media, or I like to call him the GOAT of media, Phil Steele. And he put out his preseason all SEC teams. There were 4 players from Texas A&M on this. He had 4 preseason teams. I've got a few players that I think you could argue were snubs from this list. And then I want to talk about the players that were on it. There's one that was really surprising to me, but I think it's exciting. So let's get right into it. On the first team offense, there are no Aggies listed. I've lost my list. Here we go. On the first team offense, there's no Aggies listed. On the first team defense, there is 1 player listed, and I don't think it's any kind of surprise who that is. That would be none other than Nic Scourton, as he should be. Then you go down to the second team offense, and someone is listed. And it's not a running back or receiver, quarterback. It's Chase Bisontis. I think that's really – they also have him listed at guard. I think that is so interesting. I've talked about the offensive line combinations, and, hey, maybe Bisontis, you can bring him inside, you can leave him outside. Either way, I'm fine. I think he can succeed in both spots. So wherever he ends up playing this year, I'm fine with it. I'm starting to lean toward him playing guard. I still believe you can field your best offensive line unit with him at tackle, but that's my opinion. So having him second team offense, I think was really, really interesting. I was not expecting that at all. But you take that, and then the second team defense, you've, of course, who else? Shemar Turner. No surprise there. Very, very deserving, and he definitely earned to be there. Then on the third team, I believe there's no Aggies at all on the third team. Yeah, no Aggies on the third team. Then on the fourth team, there's no Aggies on the offense, but on the defense, you've got Tyreek Chappell. So, looking at this list, so 4 total Aggies, I think that I'm a little surprised. I think, Tyreek Chappell's fair, a lot of experience, a lot of, that's fair. I can live with that. I agree with obviously Nic Scourton and Shemar. The only one that was, I think, surprising was Bisontis, and I think he's going to have a great season. I just think that was a little bit high. Maybe not. I don't know, but it felt like that was a little bit high. But hey, we'll take it. I mean, if he has that kind of season, and think how good this offensive line can be. So snubs. I don't believe that this player was a snub. I'm going to say Connor Wigman because once again, there's only one quarterback from each team, so there's 4 quarterbacks. I'm the reason I'm saying Connor Wigman's a snub because he's not really a snub. I would have never expected him to be on this list, but I do expect him to potentially be a top 4 quarterback in the SEC when it's all said and done. And yes, it would take an elite season. It would take a lot of things going Texas A&M's way. I'm not saying I'm betting on it. I'm not saying it's going to happen. Lock it in, guarantee. But I do believe there is a very serious world where Connor Wigman ends up a top 4 quarterback in the SEC. So I'm a little surprised that one of the 2 running backs, Ruben Owens and Le'Veon Moss, were not listed. I'll tell you this. I don't know. I think whichever one of them takes over as the guy, as the lead back, the workhorse, whoever it is, I don't believe that there are 4 running backs in the SEC better than whoever ends up being the guy there. So I think, you could have had Le'Veon Moss, 4th team offense. I think that's a little bit surprising to me. I know there's good running backs in the conference, but I think these guys are great. I think they're really good. I think if you wanted a receiver, you could have gone Noah Thomas. Maybe now I would have said probably 4th team, but I think that Noah Thomas is a player you could have had. Then Trey Zune, I still think Trey Zune's going to have a good season. I think that is definitely deserving of the 4th team offense. I mean, I know this is a conference where there's a lot of good tackles, but I think Trey Zune's going to have a good season. It seems like a lot of people agree with that. And then lastly was Terrion York. I don't know how Terrion York didn't sneak on the 4th team or something like that. I mean, there's a lot of players that I think you could argue should have snuck on the 4th team, but this is fair. I understand, and I think it's honestly exciting they had Bisontis ranked as high as they did. So that is Phil Steele's preseason All SEC team. Now I want to talk about one thing real quick before we get to move on to the Schloss conversation. But so the new video game, the new college football video game that's coming out that everybody's excited about. They ranked the atmospheres in college football. And where is Kyle Field ranked? Numero uno, right where it should be. Now, why is this important? Obviously, it is important. But I will tell you this. There's a reason to me why it is so important. And that reason is pretty plain and simple. To me, when I look at this team, or when I look at this, this season, we have time and time again here at Locked On Aggies discussed the importance of those 4 games at home: Notre Dame, LSU, Missouri, and Texas. And knowing that you're going to be playing in front of, I know it's a big argument, but guaranteed without a conversation, a top 5 atmosphere in college football. Knowing that, use that to your advantage. I mean, that's me asking the fans. That's me asking everybody. Make sure we really prove why we're ranked so high when it comes to the home field advantage. I mean, I don't think it should be any kind of debate. I think Texas A&M's home field advantage, Kyle Field, is it's number 1. I agree, but you got to use that, because if you can find a way to win 2 of those games at home, that's when 9 wins is very much in play. Honestly, even if you just win 1 of them, you'd have to be perfect away from Kyle Field, but if you just win 1 of them, 9 wins is in play. So, use this number 1 home field advantage as an advantage, exactly what it's called. I mean, you want to use it to help your football team. And I think that the coaching staff, I think they're going to do this. I think they're going to use this advantage to their advantage. So know that remember that is the reason I wanted to bring it up is the 4 most important games of the season, I think, are all being played in Kyle Field, and the fans can make a monumental difference in those games with their voice box, their vocal cords, yell, scream, loud, participate in everything. That is how you can help this football team win games. So I that's why I wanted to talk about this just for a minute, because I think it's important. I think it's an opportunity for the fans to help this team win football games, important games on the schedule. So, you're ranked as number 1 atmosphere in college football. Let's prove it this year. And I don't think it's going to be hard to do that at all. So it is time to talk a little bit about Coach Schloss and what happened. We'll talk about that coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. Ladies and gentlemen, now I know I had some folks, comment and saying, "Oh, baseball, we're ready to move on." And so this will probably be our last baseball conversation. When we hire a coach, I will probably talk about the coach, but that'll at the tail end of a show. This will be it for baseball. So, but had to talk about this for a minute. And I kind of, I'm not going to say I call my shot here, but I said yesterday on the show, if y'all remember, I said I just had a weird feeling about this. And now, I did not expect Schloss to leave. I didn't. I'm not going to say I fully thought he was gone, but I will say that I didn't feel safe. I know everyone, I saw everyone saying the post-game comments after the loss to Tennessee, and I said, my argument was, what do you want him to say? If he's really considering this job, if he's considering making the move to a new school, he's not going to come up there in the press conference after losing in the national championship game, knowing he's going to have to, take his team home and everything and be like, oh, well, yeah, I'm taking that job. But, once again, if you haven't seen the news, Schloss takes the head coaching job at Texas, which is, this one hurts. And I'll tell you this, normally I'm always critical of Texas fans. I'm always saying, oh, I know we're going to have Texas fans in the comments about this and this is crazy. This is one, I'm going to be honest, folks, and as much as I hate to say it, they're allowed to give us to poke fun for this one. This is a big deal, coming in and just taking your coach who just took your team, who has had a lot of success since his time at Texas A&M, just took you to a national championship series and just came up short against a really good Tennessee team. That is not ideal, losing your coach. And I'll tell you this, I will say this, I'm not going to talk bad on Coach Schloss. I'm not going to sit here and hammer or anything like that. I've been seeing it on Twitter, and I've actually been seeing media members do it a little bit, and I think it's fair, but it's not, I'm not going to do it personally. But what I am going to say is I do think it's a little bit wild to make the comments about just you could have done the whole, coach, are you interested in the Texas job? And you could have done the whole, well, no, I'm not right now. Just worried about, being with these players and proud of this team. You could have deflected it, but I mean, he went on and on about how, I took this job, not expecting to move again. This is going to be my last job, and that kind of whole spiel. And I was like, man, he really oversold it, knowing that he left 24 hours later. So no, I'm not going to sit here and knock him. I just think that was a little bit, I think you could have, he really sold that answer to then take the job like 19 hours later. Good luck, Schloss. We're gonna have to hate you when we play you. No kidding there. And we're gonna have to beat him. It's all you can do. Beat him. Kick his behind when he's coaching the Longhorns. So now obviously the Aggies are looking for their next head baseball coach. I haven't really seen big boards yet. It'll kind of be interesting to see where the Aggies go, what direction they go in. Obviously you'll be able to pay a coach pretty good. I think the Aggies are going to get a really good coach. Do you go get a proven head coach somewhere? Do you go get a guy who's an up and coming assistant? I think you go proven head coach if it's me, but it'll still be interesting to see what direction they end up going here. But yeah, this was a really weird situation. Let me know y'all's thoughts on this in the YouTube comments. How angry are you? How do we feel? I'm anxious to hear what everyone has to say about this, but that'll probably be our last baseball conversation for a while. That is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Aggies. Thank you all so much for being here every single day. Really, really appreciate it. Hope everybody has an outstanding rest of their day today, and we will see you tomorrow.